Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome back in, all my friends, to the show that never ends. Tim Costello, Scott Barzilla, born on the Bayou Sports, coming to you hot here on what seems to be our new night, Wednesday night.
So are you familiar with the concept of the earworm?
I am, yes. It's a song or something that just gets stuck in your head or in your ear, theoretically, that you just can't get rid of.
Now, do y'all pass them back and forth in the Costello home?
Not really, no.
I got that the other day because you were talking about the show that never ends. We were listening on the way on our trip to Oklahoma to the 80s Top 40 Countdown. And sitting there at number 20 was Never Ending Story. And so I started humming it and singing it. And then all of a sudden, Janet started cussing at me because I had gotten it stuck in her head.
Yeah, that one is not one that I would assume would be on the top 80s playlist there. But hey, what are you going to do? I don't know. Like, I feel like if we get something stuck in our head, it's, we had some family jam sessions or something along the lines there, but nothing where we're passing it back and forth or anything like that.
No, we did get in that particular countdown, We Are the World. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular tune.
I got to say, Scott, you guys do road trip music a little bit differently than we do. If that's the stuff that you're jamming on a 9-hour drive from Houston to Oklahoma.
Oh, no, it's nostalgia. Whenever you get an American Top 40 countdown, it's like it's appointment radio.
Are you doing like a Sirius or station, or are you doing like a one of these streaming services playlist? Where are you getting your tunes from here, Scott?
No, it's Sirius XM. It's the 80s on 8. But we also, we do 90s on 9 every once in a while. We do the aughts, the 2010s. So sometimes, when we're not doing a countdown, we'll switch it. When we get a really bad song, we'll switch it to one of the other ones. But We Are the World, we had to stop Ann in the back seat, and we had to stop her and said, "You got to listen to this. You have to experience this." And so she did.
Yeah, we do that with Soy every now and then. If a good song comes up on the playlist, hey, take the headphones off and hear this one. We got a 12-hour drive coming up on Friday, where I'm sure Haley and I will be jamming out for a majority of it while Sawyer's head is buried in an iCarly episode of some sorts.
Yeah, she was listening. Ann was listening to a podcast, so that sounds about right.
But let's talk a little bit about this Houston Texans. OTAs, Scott, are underway. You're riding for Battle Red Bog, so I'm sure you're paying close attention. A lot of, dare I say, good news coming out of Houston here this week. Stephon Diggs was quoted as, I'm not a guy who smiles a lot, but I've been smiling the whole time I've been here. Multiple sources have said Kenyon Green looks fantastic, has acted the part. Our second-round pick this year, the cornerback, won the Swarm Award today at practice. Will Anderson looks like he's put on like 20 pounds of pure muscle. Danielle Hunter has mentioned just how happy he is to be in Houston and how welcoming the locker room is and how much he can't wait for this year. Scott, am I just drinking the Kool-Aid, or does this sound like a team that, is coming together, right? I've seen Remember the Titans, and I know what team bonding looks like, and I feel like we found it.
So is D'Amico taking them on a run to a cemetery?
It might have already happened, like you got Danielle Hunter on one side, like strong side, like Will Anderson to the other side, left side, whatever it is.
So here's a cemetery where a battle is fought. We think maybe if we don't come together,
you could take it to Galveston, do a little Juneteenth jog, or something like that. If you wanted to fully go the Remember the Titans route, you could absolutely do like a Galveston Juneteenth run.
Hey, I'm all for old school, but the 30-mile jaunt from downtown to Galveston might be a little far for these guys.
I'm thinking like team bus to the Strand, and then you run the seawall.
Guys are running a marathon today. Suit up.
Right.
Now, I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I think that this time of year, there's always going to be optimism in all 32 camps. But we've seen years past where, before D'Amico got here, where you kind of knew, particularly, say a David Culley or Lovie Smith camp, where you just kind of knew this is going to get ugly. But, my question is, and I'm going to throw in Damian Pearson here. What storyline are you most encouraged by?
I don't know, because you just mentioned one that I forgot to say, which was Joe Mixon is impressed with Damian Pierce. So, right, that's a huge storyline. I don't know, man. I think the idea that we could have got a steal of a cornerback in the second round that could come in and complement Stingley automatically is something I'd love to see. CJ Stroud saying today that the Texans already have the next Andre Johnson when he was talking about Nico Collins. That's pretty nice. I don't know. This is why I feel like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Because I don't know if I've ever felt this way about the Houston Texans. Like, I talked myself into thinking, the year that Matt Schaub goes down, that was our year, right? Like, going into that season, like, I had talked myself into it. We had turned down Peyton. We didn't need Peyton. All the other stuff that went with that. And then Matt Schaub gets hurt and Matt Leinart gets hurt. Now the Yater Nader comes in, the Bengal Slayer gets it done, but they do what they always do and lose in the second round, right? So, like, I've never felt like we were in that position. Like, even looking back, right? Do you feel like if the Texans had D'Amico Ryans that they hold on to that 24-0 lead in Kansas City? Because I think they do. Like, I think having this coach brings a new level of faith and trust. Having a quarterback that you could literally say, like, this guy's a fucking killer, man. If this guy is that guy that don't give him too much time. Oh, fuck, we left him too much time. We have one of those guys. So you've got a coach that you could trust. You've got a killer for a quarterback. You have what could be the best wide receiver room in the NFL. You've got a 3-down back. You've got a guy who could be a bruiser, and the 3-down back is saying this guy looks fantastic. You've got new kickoff rules that could benefit Damian Pierce in the return game. And you've got an unbelievable amount of talent on the defensive side of the ball, which is already one of the best defenses in the league last year. And it's only going to get better. Like, it's tough to pick one storyline, but, like, I like points. I want to see fireworks. Like, I think Nico Collins is the storyline.
Well, it's funny you were mentioning D'Amico Ryans in that Kansas City game. I was about to ask, as coach or as middle linebacker?
Coach, but yeah, either one would have helped. But no, I think if he was the coach of that team, number one, you don't have the super big punt. Like, I don't think your team would have flatlined the way that they did. There would have been more fight in them. I don't know. Like and some of those players would have been on the team, right? We would have had better quality roster spots because D'Amico Ryans wouldn't have put up with that Jack Easterby bullshit. So
Yeah.
I don't
I mean, I
know.
think,
I just have a trust in this organization now that maybe I've never had before. I've said this story time and time again. I interacted with Cal McNair when I thought he was going to be like Tommy Boy. But at the end of the day, when I said Tommy Boy, I thought it was a negative thing. But you forget Tommy Boy turns it around.
yeah, he made good.
So you know what? Like the Tommy Boy thing really is a great point for Cal. I just caught him on the 15 years at LaSalle version of it when he was parking his truck in a fire lane because all the good spots were taken at Texans training camp one year. But you know what? Like I have faith in him. I have faith in his wife. I have a strange amount of faith in Nick Caserio. And I believe that we're going to be prepared every week to play. I don't think maybe we will always have a better game plan than the other team. Sometimes you get out coached, and that happens. But I do believe that we're going to be a team that comes in and prepared. Like I still remember there was when the Texans were on Hard Knocks. There's one quote that I never like. Bill O'Brien's pissed because he's like, "Why do I got to bring the fucking juice every day?" Right? Like sometimes you guys got to bring the juice. I can't imagine D'Amico Ryan's ever saying something like that, right? Like if he saw that the juice wasn't there, I feel like he's going to turn the juice up and he's going to bring more. Versus Bill O'Brien bitching and saying, "Why do I got to bring the fucking juice? Why can't you guys have it?" Like, no, D'Amico would have that every day, and he's going to bring the juice, and you're going to match his level, right? That's where I think the difference is.
Well, to me, the big difference is, and I've been a Texans fan for all, the 22 seasons. And I think this is the first time where I look at a team that, number one, has a talented roster, which we've had before, but I think has a coaching staff that is dedicated to putting those guys in the positions that they're going to be their most effective. And I think when you looked at like at the Kubiak years, I think he did that offensively.
I'd even argue, but I'd argue real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'd even argue that Kubiak didn't necessarily want to collect the best offensive talent possible.
No.
He wanted to collect the guys that fit the positions within his offense the best, right? He needed a certain type of player to play the X receiver. He needed a certain good blocking wide receiver, Kevin Walter, to play the Y receiver. He needed a tight end who could, right? Where I feel like with Caserio and to slow it more really than D'Amico because it's slow, it's offense, right? I feel like he's gonna say, give me all the talent you can give me, and I will find a way to utilize them within an offensive game plan. I have to run play action to start. I have to run a bootleg right to start the game and take a shot to Andre Johnson every single start of the game. We don't have that anymore, right? I feel like we have coaching staff who's willing to say, give me the best players you can get, and we'll build a system around those players versus maybe the Kubiak and even into the O'Brien years of this is our system. Please find players that fit our system.
Yeah, and I think with the O'Brien years particularly, and I think Kubiak on offense, you raise a good point. And we heard the so-called game plan offense, which it was going to change.
Such bullshit, man.
It was going to change from week to week. I really think this offense is going to become more of a version of that game plan offense than Bill O'Brien's system ever was.
I remember that press conference when he came in. He said, we're going to be a game. And we all soaked it up, right? We're like, fuck yeah, that's what we need. No more of this bootleg right deep throw every fucking game. Like, oh my God. And you know what his game plan was? The halfback draw on third and long. Somehow that was in the game plan every week.
Well, no. The game plan, particularly when named redacted 2.0, is what we call Deshaun Watson, by the way. When he became the quarterback, it became run the ball up the gut for 3 quarters, and then Deshaun's got to play hero ball for the 4th quarter. That was basically, the Bill O'Brien offense. And you looked at him, and he went to Alabama, and that's what it became at Alabama. It became run the ball up the gut, and then we're going to give it to Bryce Young, and please God, bail us out in the 4th quarter. And now he gets another head job. I don't get it. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see from week to week, particularly on offense, but I think on defense too, There's some teams that are going to say, you know what, we got to double Will Anderson. We can't let Will Anderson beat us. Well, guess what? That means Daniel Hunter's being blocked one-on-one. Next week, they might say, damn it, we can't let Daniel Hunter beat us. We're gonna have to double team him. Well, that means Will Anderson's one-on-one. Or if you double both of those guys, here comes Christian Harris. Yeah, Danico Autry, or here comes Christian Harris, from the linebacking core. So I think on offense and defense, you're going to see different guys doing it every week.
I agree with you.
Well, and somebody asked CJ Stroud, how are you going to get all these guys the ball? Well, the answer is that you run the play. You run through your progressions. Whoever's open gets the ball. That's how quarterbacking works.
And I feel like we're going to be one of those teams that certain guys are going to feast certain days, right? Like we're going to, as you said, if you run the play and the way that we match up against Dallas, right? I'm just throwing one out there, right? And Nico's just feasting because Diggs on Diggs, brotherly matchup, that's getting locked up. Then they're double teaming Tank. And, next thing you know, Nico's wide open all day. So Nico has 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, whatever. But then next week, Nico goes for 50 yards. But Tank Dell has 160 and a tutty. And then the next week, it's Stephon Diggs with 10 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns because he was the matchup. Like, I think truly we're gonna see a scenario where you can't be perfect for 4 quarters against this core, right? Like you can't do that. There's going to be a weakness on your defense, and CJ Stroud is the kind of guy who's just going to hammer that nail till it's gone, right? Like you look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady would find that matchup every time. He would figure out where, hey, at the line of scrimmage, Gronk is lined up against a cornerback. Mismatch. Let's go. Hey, at the line of scrimmage, I've got James White optioned out of the backfield one-on-one with the middle linebacker. Okay, let's go. That's where the Texans go, right? Like either every play we're going to find the mismatch, or there's going to be a guy who's just mismatched all game, kind of the way that the Niners receiving core works, right? Like you have games where Ayuk goes off, you have games where Debo goes off, you have games where Jennings went off, or Pearsall is a guy that they think has a lot of upside. That's it's going to go one of those two ways, right? Like I think everybody will get the yardage, and it could be in spurts, or just as CJ Stroud gets better and better, Scott, and he's able to look at the line of scrimmage and go mismatch. All right, let's go. That's going to be fantastic too.
Well, the storyline that I'm most interested in is the one I mentioned. Is that to me, if Dameon Pierce becomes 2022 Dameon Pierce, you got to watch out because to me, what's not, and I think what people don't mention about the San Francisco offense is, you've got
2 running backs.
You got Christian McCaffrey, but you also had, a second back,
Elijah Mitchell.
Exactly. And so to me,
so what they do too, Scott, though, they'll put Mitchell in the backfield, and then they'll have Christian McCaffrey in the slot. Now you can bring Christian McCaffrey through the backfield, and you can either do a little end around pitch, the motion draws someone away, and Mitchell's handoff, right? The trickeration aspect is turned up to a whole nother level when you've got a second running back that can hammer the rock home.
Yeah. And so what I'm thinking is that, we mentioned games where you mentioned like, hey, Tank's got it going this game. Maybe Dalton Schultz has it going this game. What if there's a game where the other team is, we're going to take away the pass. We're only going to put 5 or 6 guys in the box, and you can run the ball 40 times on them.
What I'd love to see, if you could get Pierce going, what about a little wildcat? Little Dameon Pierce in the backfield, and then you bring, Mixon through the backfield as that sweep route. Let him read it, give it up to the end around, or take it hard up the middle, right? Like that could even become an opportunity if Dameon Pierce finds his footing with the team that we have. You've got 2 good tight ends, right? You took a tight end who has tons of comparisons to Rob Gronkowski. I'm not saying that's who he's going to be, but that's, Cade Stover has been compared to Gronk. He was the college quarterback of CJ Stroud. You've got those 2 guys. You can throw Diggs out there. You can throw Nico Collins out there. I don't want Tank Dell blocking. But you can throw those two guys out there with two tight ends. You can work a lot of cool things into this playbook if you got two running backs who are running well. I mean, think back to the Foster and Ben Tate days, right? Like Foster needs a little breather. Here comes Ben Tate, who was, as smooth as Foster was. Ben Tate was a bull in a china shop, man. He was seeking contact, and he was going to run your ass over.
Yeah, and what I like about Joe Mixon, and you think about this offense, think about when was the last time we had a running back that was really good at scoring touchdowns?
I mean, you probably have to take it all the way back to Arian, right? Like
Exactly.
Hyde was okay, but again,
But I
like,
don't
if
think
you're
Hyde
saying
was-
really good, Arian's the
Yeah,
only guy
like-
we've ever had that was really good at making, finding that punching it into talent, right? Like Arian was great all over the field, but when it got to the goal line, like Arian, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but cockroaches have that ability to slip in almost anywhere, right? Like Arian had that ability. Give him the tiniest little sliver, and he'll find a way just to get the ball across.
And Mixon's not Arian Foster. We have to say that right off the bat.
Different style backs, right? They're not the same even style back.
But he has shown an ability and a nose for the goal line that I don't think any Texan back has had since Arian Foster.
I would agree. I would completely agree. I think the running game is going to be a whole nother. And again, we didn't have a running game last year, right? We almost were the run and shoot, where I feel like the passing game allowed Singletary to have some success in the running game, but we couldn't sit there and pound it down your throat 25 times and let that open up play action. And it's just, we weren't good enough. We didn't have a good enough offensive line. We didn't have a good enough scheme that fit the backs that we had. Pierce was rehabbing and didn't really get a chance, as he says, to learn the new scheme. So, that's going to be exciting. There's a lot coming out of these OTAs. And we haven't even mentioned, I mentioned it briefly, Will Anderson looks fantastic. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of Will Anderson, Scott. He looked a little thin last year out there at times. But my man has been at Papa's barbecue or something, putting some muscle on, eating some good lean protein, because he looks effing jacked. Absolutely jacked.
You just hope he hasn't lost any quickness. That's the main thing. When
I don't think so, man. He doesn't look he doesn't look fat. He looks like he still looks good, but his arms just like his arms look fantastic. I mean, I hate to sit here and just rave over another man's body, but damn, he looks good.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, he seemed like a good speed rusher, but he really, he didn't have that power move. Because, offensive tackles in the NFL, they're not going to let somebody 230, 240 bulldoze them. But all of a sudden, you still go from 240 to 260. You never know.
Keep the speed. That's the goal. I'm excited. I'm really, really excited. I don't, as a Houston sports fan, you don't want to get yourself too high up, right? I think the Astros are the only team that I've truly allowed myself to let that happen with, because they've rewarded me in my lifetime, or at least in my memory. I remember going to the Rockets parade in 95. I don't remember any of the games, but the Astros, we've put our faith in and we've been rewarded twice. We've never even gotten to a championship round with the Texans, but I feel like something tells me this year's different, Scott. The press run that CJ Stroud has been on has been fantastic. He has been everywhere. Literally, guy's been to fucking China. Just something about this team feels different than every other Texans team that's ever been on Kirby Drive. And that's my main thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to go back to the beginning of 2012 to come close to that, because that was, before Schaub gets hurt. Actually, that period, right before the Liz Frank, you're thinking, okay, we got a great offense. Now we got a great defense. We got this thing rolling. And then, of course, the Liz Frank injury happens, and, the rest is history. My only concern is with this roster right now, what happens if Stroud misses time? That's my only concern.
Yeah, but that's every good team in the NFL, right? Like, I think the Ravens might be the only team when they had Hundley to have a legitimately like solid backup. Like, yes, people will applaud the idea of bringing a Marcus Mariota in to be your backup, former number one guy, yada yada yada. But like at the end of the day, Mariota's not that good. Like, at this point in their careers, would you rather have Marcus Mariota or Davis Mills? Like, I don't want either, but it's pretty much a toss up, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you have to win games without CJ Stroud, it's going to be defense has to play great, right? Like, you got to have great defensive games. You're going to have to run the ball well, and you're going to have to hope that your receiving talent makes plays for Davis Mills. Like, if he just is good enough and gives guys like Diggs and Collins and Tank Dell a chance, you have to hope that they are better than the people covering them, and they will do enough and make enough plays to survive what in this scenario is a 2 or 3 game absence, right? If you lose, God forbid, knock on wood, if he goes down for the season, like, no, we're not making a playoff run. But if you got to survive 2 or 3 games, I got to think that defense looks at each other and says, it's on us, boys. Mixon says it, I got you. And Stephon Diggs says, just throw it my way. I'll find a way, right? Like, I feel like those guys step up a bit.
yeah. The only guy that's out there that kind of gives me some pause is Ryan Tannehill. Not as a starter. Not as a starter.
No, we don't need to.
But my issue is that obviously they didn't have enough faith in Mills to start him whenever Stroud was out, and what we saw from Case Keenum was smart as a whip, but he doesn't physically have it anymore.
Right.
And so I do think if Dameon Pierce can be that good second running back option, you could conceivably win a ball game or two running it 40 times, particularly if your defense clamps down, get some turnovers, get some short fields. You could win some games that way, which you wouldn't have last year. That would be the hope.
Yeah. I mean, every team in the NFL, if you lose a starting quarterback, every other part of your roster has to step up. The Texans would be no different, right? Davis Mills is not one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. Is he one of the best 64? Maybe. I think maybe. Like, can you name 64 guys better than Davis Mills? I don't think so. Like, would you rather, if you're the Denver Broncos, would you rather have Davis Mills or Zach Wilson as your backup? Right? Like, that's that's the level of that's what we've got to remember, right? There are very few teams in the NFL that have like 2 starting quarterbacks, right? Like, and when they do, it causes a problem. The Falcons drafting Penix with having Kirk Cousins there, or even the year before where they had Ritter and they had the guy from Washington who came over, Taylor Heineke. You constantly feel like, do I go to this guy? Do I go to that guy? Hey, he hasn't played great. Maybe I go to Heineke for a spark. If you've got that option as a coach, you want to pull the trigger. So, like, obviously you want a guy that if he has to play some games, he can go in, he can play good competitive football, right? You want a guy that can be smart enough to help CJ Stroud get prepared, watch some film, see if he notices anything that maybe CJ misses, and he can, hey, CJ, I noticed the safety does this on these counts, or whatever it is. Okay, like, that's what we're looking for, right? We're not looking for a quarterback competition in camp. We're not the Oakland Raiders. We're not one of those teams. Like, we have our guy. We need someone who can support him, help him be better, and God forbid if something happens, win 2 or 3 football games.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's nobody I want holding a clipboard more than Case Keenum. But he's also, I think, and I'll see what you think about this. Bobby Slowick is almost certainly going to be a top.
Everybody's going to move up one. I'm with you. Everybody's going to move up one. Slowick, the head coach, Johnson, the offensive coordinator, and Case Keenum is going to be the quarterback.
Yeah,
coach, right?
That's what I was thinking. That's absolutely what I was thinking. And Davis Mills' contract's going to run out after this year. So you can go out, after this season, you can go out hunting for just a solid veteran backup quarterback.
I still think I'd like to have Clayton Tune. Like if I was the Houston Texans, like Clayton Tune's kind of a similar style player to CJ Stroud, just not as physically gifted. And I feel like that's what you want for your backup, right? Like you want somebody with a similar playing style who plays the game a similar way. You don't have to change the offense up that much. At the end of the day, there's only one CJ Stroud. But like, hey, this guy plays a similar style game. We don't have to switch everything up because he can't throw the same routes that CJ can, right? That's what I'm looking for in a backup quarterback if someone has to play. Like I want a similar playing style. Like that's when I thought it was crazy when we signed, AJ McCarron to back up Deshaun Watson. If something happens to Watson, you're playing AJ McCarron, they're playing a completely different offense at that point, right? Because Deshaun Watson had to run for his fucking life left and right because we couldn't ever figure out how to block. And now you're going to bring in a pocket passer who's going to sit there and get lit the fuck up all the time? Like, no, you need somebody who matches what you have a game plan for.
Yeah, that's true. That would be my one thing, like my one wish list, I guess, this offseason. But now I mentioned, Tannehill, the price has to be right on him. Because my fear on Tannehill is that he thinks he's a starting quarterback when he really isn't anymore. And I don't think anybody has signed him, probably because
Not without injury.
Probably because he's thinking, hey, I can find a spot where I can compete and maybe start. I don't think that spot's out there for him. But if he's willing to take like less than $5 million, I'd be glad, to bring him aboard. Just as another option who's probably more physically able to do it than Keenum is at this point.
I think if he could have the same thought process or mindset that say like Joe Flacco did, right? Like at one point I was one of the better quarterbacks in this league. My body will not allow me to be that anymore. I still have the brain. I still have the knowledge, the ability to recognize coverages. And if you need me for 6 games, I can ball out for 6 games. My body will give you that. I can't give you 17 anymore. But my brain is there, and I'm there if you need me. If that's the thought process that Ryan Tannehill could come in with, yeah, I'd be okay with that. He's a local, he's a somewhat local guy, right? Went to A&M. I would be opposed. I don't think we need it. I don't think at this point in their career, if you had to play Davis Mills or you had to play Ryan Tannehill, I don't think there's that noticeable of a difference in the performance you're going to get from either one of those guys. You would not be looking to draft mayonnaise boy, as we've lovingly called Will Levis, if Ryan Tannehill was any good, or you wouldn't have drafted Malik
Willis
the year before. You went quarterback 2 years in a row, high in the draft. If you thought Ryan Tannehill had anything left in the tank, you don't take Malik Willis. You don't like Levis. Okay, 2 years of injuries in a row, contract was coming up, yada yada yada. But I don't know, man.
I'm going to push back on this a little bit. I don't think there's any way that Davis Mills is anywhere in the league of Ryan Tannehill, because I just don't think Davis Mills I don't think he's a top 50 quarterback. I just don't. I think we're Ryan Tannehill, and they got on this hamster wheel that Ryan Tannehill could not get them to the Super Bowl, even with the best running back in the league. I think that's why they started looking for Mayonnaise Boy. That's why they started looking for Malik Willis. So if you stick him on the Texans are not getting to the Super Bowl. That we'll just throw that out right now. Could they win in a 17-game schedule 8 or 9 games with a Ryan Tannehill? Sure. Do you think Davis Mills is captaining this team to 8 wins if he's the starting quarterback for 17 games?
No. I think he has too many flaws that will be exposed. And I said that, though. I think if you have a 3-game absence, Davis Mills is fine. I think he will get you through that. But I don't think there's anybody in the league that's going to make up for the loss of CJ Stroud for more than 3 games.
The thing is that they didn't think he was good enough for those 2 games. That's what kind of worries me.
Yeah. I don't know though. I feel like I don't know if that's what the case was because he came in, he played against Cleveland, right? Like he played better
Like
than
garbage time, but
I don't know. I don't know, Scott. It's an interesting thought. I wouldn't be opposed to going quarterback in the mid to late rounds of the next draft if you think that you could find somebody who's better. Especially if you know are in a situation where Keenum is moving up, you're losing, Davis Mills, sign a guy for a 1-year deal, draft a rookie in the 6th round, knowing he's going to be a backup, and go at it that way, right? Like that's kind of what the Ravens have done, and it worked out in their favor. They made the playoffs when their starting quarterback gets hurt. But I'd say for 90% of the teams in the NFL, if your starting franchise quarterback goes down, you kind of go, well, fuck, there's this season, right? Like there's very few teams, even like the Patriots when Tom Brady went down, like yeah, they went 11-5. They still missed the playoffs though, right?
yeah.
Like they did not make the playoffs with Matt Castle that year.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to find is Mills' contract, his rookie deal's out after this season. Keenum signed a 2-year deal, so he's officially a free agent. This quarterback decision's going to come. They're going to have to do something, if not this summer, then before the next draft or something, because I don't see them paying Davis Mills.
No, but I also see a world. I see a world where maybe somebody who hasn't gotten the luck they want in the draft. They're not that high in the pecking order, right? Like kind of what happened to the Raiders this year, and now they're playing, between Gardner Minshew and O'Connell, right? Like I could see a scenario where someone is a little bit desperate for a quarterback and is willing to pay Davis Mills low level starter money, or what would be considered high backup money, right? Like I could see that. Like it's not unreal, right? The guy started for 2 years. I don't think it should be the Texans, and I'm not saying it's the right move, but we live in a world where if you don't have a quarterback, you're fucked. So people are always looking for that guy. I mean, look who, like, again, Matt Castle got a big deal off of a year as a good backup.
Yeah.
Matt Flynn got paid by Seattle over like a 1-game performance when Aaron Rodgers was sitting out, right? Like, if Davis Mills gets a start at the, what if the Texans are in a position where they clinch the number 1 overall seed and they don't play anybody the last game, and Davis Mills goes out and just balls against nobodies, and all of a sudden someone's like, maybe we should, maybe Davis Mills could be the guy for us. We're sitting at the 15th spot this draft. We don't have a quarterback. What if you're Seattle? You're going in again with Tavares Jackson, or do we maybe take a shot at a guy like Davis Mills?
Geno Smith.
That's what I'm sorry. Geno Smith, not Tavares Jackson. But like, either way, right? Like at some point, if you're one of those teams that's in quarterback purgatory where you keep going 9-7, or I guess 9-8 now, or 8-9, 7-9, and you're not quite good enough to get that top level guy, and you don't want to give up 3 first-round draft picks, you go Davis Mills, and either it goes one way or the other, right? Either he's fucking garbage and you get that number 1 overall pick the next year, or he's better than you thought. And worst case scenario, you're back in the same spot you were the year before.
Let me give you a delicious thought process here.
You want to have him as a tank commander for a team that really needs somebody.
The Cowboys balk at paying Dak Prescott.
Here we go.
Oh, shit. We don't have a quarterback. Trey Lance can't do it. Let's sign Davis Mills.
And he commands the tank.
Can you imagine? But can you imagine the Cowboys tanking under Jerry Jones?
I think the only way I can believe that, Scott, is if after they don't sign Dak, Jerry comes out to the podium and says, just because Dak's gone doesn't mean we're not going all in. And then they sign Davis Mills. I think he would have to make that statement first. We're committed to winning here in Dallas. We're going to find a way to bring another championship. Don't you worry. And then like 2 days later, they report like Cowboys signed Davis Mills.
By a neck.
It was a neck and neck race between Cowboys and other teams, but they came out just ahead. But let's take it from the fun and games that are the Houston Texans and to the depressing state of the injuries of the Houston Astros. 2 more arms going down, 2 more Tommy John surgeries coming, as Jose Urquidy and Cristian Javier are both headed to the surgeons or surgery, right? The Astros now will be without those guys for the start of next year. At best, you hope to get them back by All-Star break. I saw a post the other day outlining, if JV has to miss any time at all or misses a couple starts, there's a chance he doesn't get that 140. So he might be gone next year. And you're looking at a rotation anchored by Luis Garcia, Ronel Blanco, and the legend that is Lance McCullers.
Well, I had a perfect spot idea. I don't know if you've heard these ads before, but pitcher, fade in, to the audio. Joe Espada talking. Okay, who do we got going tomorrow? I think we got that kid from AA. Let's see, the next day, I think we got that old guy from the Atlantic League. Oh, man, I need Indeed. And then the woman pops in. Indeed you do.
That's sadly, that's where we're at right now. Luckily, Aaron Getty has looked like he, now again, knock on wood here, looks like Aaron Getty has maybe turned a quarter a little bit, or at least figured something out about pitching in the big leagues. Hunter Brown has been better here as of late, and the Astros took 2 or 3 from the Cardinals. They were in danger of losing 2 out of 3, but luckily the bats woke up late in game 1. They had a big inning again in game 2. And then today, I don't know if you saw the lineup when they scratched Alex Bregman, but
yeah,
that was you want to talk about the Sunday softball league lineup. That was it today. But I did text you, Scott, because with everything that's happening, injuries, Kyle Tucker's banged up. The thing that was interesting to me, and again, it worked out in the favor because Trey Cabbage got called up and he homered today. But it was interesting to me that you called somebody up and immediately started him in right field when Chaz is there. It seems to me like this ball club has completely lost faith in Chaz McCormick at this time. And I'm wondering why, at least maybe send him to AAA to get things right. Why are you wasting this roster spot and allowing him to languish? And I'm not for keeping, Kessinger, but, what about the shortstop and center fielder down in AAA, Pedro Leon? What about somebody like that, right? He can play a few different positions. Kessinger doesn't play anyway. Why keep McCormick here to just ride the bench?
Well, they sent Kessinger down to bring up Cabbage.
Right. So why keep McCormick on the bench and never play him?
So my question is, I don't know where his option situation is at. Because I know that, that after a certain amount of time in the big leagues, you can't option a guy.
You might be right there on the time for him.
I don't know what it is on that. I'm with you though, that it's all hands on deck.
But even if you're Chaz, I'd come to the team and say, hey, can I go get some at-bats in AAA, please? Y'all aren't playing me. There's an injury, and you're still not playing me. Let me go get right. Let me force your hand.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a good point. Or the other point, too, is you've got outfield hungry teams out there. The Giants lost their center fielder for the year. The Phillies, are having some, outfield issues, and the Phillies have World Series aspirations. Certainly they remember the catch that, Chaz McCormick had in their ballpark that, kept them from winning that game. Maybe there's a young, AAA, quadruple A pitcher that you could get, that.
Or just even maybe we don't need Yordan Alvarez playing left field, John Singleton DHing, and Jose Abreu playing first base, right? Like we could have a better collection of 3 bats that don't include Abreu and Singleton in the lineup at the same time. Like Espada feels this loyalty to Singleton that even when Abreu plays first base, he's got to find a way to keep Singleton in the lineup. So he DHs him and then plays Yordan in left field. Like, we don't need that.
Well, I think there's a whole lot going on here. And I think part of it, in one of my recent articles, I called it evidence-based decision making, because I think a lot of people focus on analytics, and analytics is kind of a poison pill, if you will, because I mean, some people are for it, some people are against it. There's lots of different kinds of evidence. I think there's, historical evidence, and then I think there's observational evidence. But what I want to know is, what evidence do you see that says Jose Abreu should be playing right now? And if there's no evidence of that, then what are we doing? Because, and we were texting about this. So Joey Loperfido went down to AAA. He's playing mostly first base. The Sugarland.
No, he's playing mostly outfield with like a little bit of first base.
Right. So their social media team throws out a tweet of him diving, making a stop at first base, and I think saying something along the lines of Joey Loperfido doing first base things, I think was what it said.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, that post gets taken down mysteriously. Someone killed it. So I don't know that we can necessarily prove that the Astros killed it. I don't know why Sugarland would take it down. I mean, you're making your guy look good. So are we taking it down because we're making our guy up here playing first base look bad? Seems like that to me, because, the thing was, what we were told was that Loperfido was not ready defensively to play first base. As if, when I said this last week, and it bears repeating, we don't have Keith Hernandez over there at first base. Now, if you had peak Keith Hernandez playing first base and hitting 220, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? But, he's good, Or if you want to put it, if we had peak Gurriel defensively over there, I'd be like, yeah, he sucks at the plate right now, but, man, he's a good fielding first baseman. You don't have that right now. So there's nothing evidence-wise that tells you that Abreu should be playing first base, which continually bumps everything else, like you're pointing out. Okay, now I got to fill a DH slot, because I can't DH Jose Abreu. I'd get laughed out of the stadium if I DH'd him. So now I've got to find somebody else for DH. Well, John Singleton's a better hitter than Abreu, and right now he's better than Chas McCormick. So I could see, okay, I want to put him in the lineup. But the game last night, there was a play that I think Chas McCormick would have made in left field that ended up not being made. And that game got pretty tight there for a second. And it would have been nice to have had that out without having a guy all the way on second base, because our guy wasn't quite quick enough to get to the ball.
And what I didn't even think about too, Scott, you're playing Loperfido in the outfield a majority of the time. Why would you bring up Cabbage instead of Loperfido if you need someone to play the outfield? Yes, again, it worked out today. Cabbage homered, but why not bring up the guy who's hitting 333, who's been successful when you brought him up? This decision making sometimes, I really don't understand it. Like, what has Loperfido done that deserved to be sent down? The answer was nothing, right? Like, he had a game-winning hit. He's shown better plate discipline. He had a home run. He played a good level of defense in the outfield. He had diving catches. He did nothing to deserve to be sent down, other than, Jose Abreu had to come back up. Now you had a spot where you needed an outfielder, or even first baseman / outfielder, and you went Cabbage instead. Like, other than maybe not wanting to waste options this year, that could be the thing I could understand, of like, hey, we don't want to waste Loperfido's options. But other than that, Scott, it makes zero sense to me that, like, they looked at the need to fill in for Kyle Tucker and thought Cabbage is better at option right now.
Well, it's beyond zero sense, because options don't work that way. Options work by year. So since they've already called him up, that's one option. They can call him up and down, and it still counts as only that one. So here's the thing, and this is where I was getting to. We are not making evidence-based decisions. And you can do this a certain number of times. Like if you look at Jose Altuve's recent history, just the last few years, you look at what's happening with him on defense, you look at typical aging patterns, giving him a 5-year deal is probably not the wisest thing that a team could do. However, he's a Hall of Famer in waiting. He's a fan favorite. And so PR-wise, that's what you're going to do. Emotionally, that's what you're going to do. But when you keep loading decisions that are emotionally based, this is where you find yourself. So like we talked about the Josh Hader signing. It wasn't the fact that they signed Josh Hader. It was the fact that it was clearly not part of their plan. Because what ended up happening is we get the news that Kendall Graveman has gone down for the year. Oh my God, we got to do something. Go out, and it's like, there's got to be a plan. And so my only thing with Loperfido is the only thing I can think of is that they have no intention of playing him every day. Because if you put him in the lineup every day, that means Jose Abreu's not in the lineup. Period. And so you have a guy making $19.5 million sitting on the bench.
But if Kyle Tucker's out, out for a week, why not have Loperfido play right field for a week?
That's not. But see, what they're doing is they're not making evidence-based decisions. They're making emotional decisions. We want to protect Jose Abreu's ego.
And as you said, it's wrong, though. We just talked for length about what happens if C.J. Stroud goes down, right? We just talked about needing a good backup. And in this scenario, we said it's obvious that Case Keenum doesn't have it. So essentially, you're picking Case Keenum over a guy who's better in Loperfido. We're going to stick in a guy who, it would be hella petty if Loperfido doesn't get called up because of the AAA tweet. Like, that would be a whole nother level, right? Because he's not even controlling that shit. But if we're just looking at, I need the best offensive and defensive player possible to get me through the next 4 games while Kyle Tucker's banged up, and you straight-faced look me in the eye and say, we feel like Trey Cabbage is a better fit for this assignment than Joey Loperfido, how? Why? By what metrics? Where the fuck did you get that information?
I have no inside information on this. So anybody who's absolutely listening to this, I have no inside information, but it almost makes you wonder if they're worried about what's going to happen if he comes up and hits.
You're not wrong.
Because, oh shit, what do we do now? We can't take this guy out of the lineup if he's still hitting 330. But
they did it already once.
Yeah, well, the thing was they sold us on the fact that Jose Abreu was ready to come back. At least they tried to.
Yeah, they didn't sell me on shit.
Well, if you listen to the fans at the ballpark last night, they didn't sell them either.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is with each day that you watch Jose Abreu play baseball. I mean, I watched him. He got a hit. Congratulations. But
he got jammed as fuck and squeaked one through the right side.
That bat speed is so damn slow.
I mean, even his home run he was late on a fastball that was up and he hit it out to right field because he kept his bat in the zone long enough to get it out to right. But I feel like that was a pitch that should have been pulled. It was a fucking hanging fastball, high middle. Like, everybody else pulls that pitch. He's late on it and hit out to right. Like, yeah, it was a homer, but at the same time.
And so the whole thing is watching him last night. The bat speed is just alarmingly slow. It's alarmingly slow.
And because of that, he knows he can't catch up to like big time heat. So he feels like his best option is to like try and catch one of these hangers, right? And do that. Yeah. And pitchers now know that. And he's now expanding his zone big time on. It's just it's a lose-lose situation, right? Like this, I feel like the momentum dropped out of this team the moment he came back. Like, again, we took 2 out of 3, but we just lost 2 out of 3 to Minnesota. We lost 2 out of 3 to Seattle. I don't know, Scott. Like, I truly feel like Abreu is a black hole in this lineup. Like, you're hitting a $20 million a year guy ninth, and it's still a problem because the lineup was better when Dubon hit ninth, and he turned that shit back over to Altuve at the top, and then you had Tucker right behind. Like, the lineup was flowing, and unfortunately now it's not.
Well, the big issue that you had is that you have basically 5 guys that you can count on, on any particular day. You can count on, in no particular order, Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Tucker, and Pena. Those are your 5 guys. In order for this team to score runs, at least 3 or 4 of those guys have got to be hot. At least 3 or 4. Because the problem is that up until the last few days, Diaz was becoming a black hole. Thank God he's coming back 3 days in a row with a homer. But then look at your other spots. What are you getting?
Jake Myers has been good.
Jake Myers. But what are you getting whenever you start putting in and you start looking at, the fact that Yordan has looked bad at times this year? Because that's happens. Altuve had 2 hits, and he didn't look good last night.
He's such a free swinger, man. It's crazy.
And then you looked at, Pena had a couple of knocks.
Pena's locked in right now. Pena looks locked in at the plate right now.
Diaz had had that bomb, but Jake had a couple of good at bats where he got, I think he got an RBI, but he wasn't necessarily top of the line Jake Myers. But the problem is that when you start having black holes in your lineup, that you're just giving away outs. You're counting on the rest of those guys to be on top of their game. And what we've seen from this team is that this offense is good, but it's not good enough to overcome 2 or 3 black holes.
No, and not many are, Scott. Like, and the Astros have overcome a black hole for 2 years offensively with Maldonado, and I think we all thought we were past that point. And now Abreu's worse than Maldonado ever was, at least with the Astros, right? Like, Maldonado is now just as bad as Jose Abreu, but he was never at this level while on the Houston Astros. But let's move it on to what could be a nice, fun topic for us, Scott. I know we both had dreams at some point of walking down Pebble Beach's fairway or Torrey Pines, or it is at the Donald Ross course, where Pinehurst, and playing in a U.S. Open. And as the great Tin Cup said, the U.S. Open is the most democratic of all golf tournaments. Anyone with a handicap of below 2 or below can enter a U.S. Open qualifier and try and play their way in. And if proof to that, there is a high school science teacher who just qualified for the U.S. Open. And I absolutely love it. We see guys like Adam Scott and Sergio Garcia having to go out and play their way in just like everybody else. And it's one of the reasons why the U.S. Open is probably my second favorite tournament to the Masters, and it's close. It's really, really close. But it's just amazing to know that, like, if I really wanted to, like, if I wanted to make it my goal and I didn't have a 10-month-old kid and I had the funds to do it, I could go out and I could qualify for the U.S. Open. I could grind. I could spend a year practicing. I can get where I need to get to, and I have just as much of a chance as everybody else who shows up to that Dallas qualifier. And it's a fucking beautiful thing. It really, really is.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of kept me is I had a realization probably about my junior or senior year in high school that I just wasn't built for tournament golf.
Yeah, I mean, it's tougher.
The thing that I kick myself at is that I didn't try out for TCU's team. And not because I thought I would make it, but you know what you do if you make the first cut where you play?
Probably somewhere pretty nice.
Colonial. I am kicking myself. When we drove up, my first time going to TCU, we're going to, it was the first time I think we were doing, it was like a weekend where it's like freshman orientation, right? So Dad and I kind of see this golf course off the university, and we're like, man, that looks nice. And then we're driving up, man, they got fans on the green. What kind of course does this? Drive into the parking lot and see Colonial and go like, yeah, no, we're not playing here.
Turn around.
Turn right around. We almost had that Paul Blart, jumping on our vehicle there like Scotty Scheffler had.
Geez, Free Scott. We could have had the old Free Scott movement would have been
a dream, but yeah. It's fun to daydream though.
all right. Well, it absolutely would be. I think as golfers, we all have that tin cup dream, right? Of playing our way in. Let's take it to a new level. And
This award we were going with, the original intent of the award was to go with somebody who's had a bad week or two on the baseball diamond or, the football field when we get to that point of the year. And unfortunately, as much as I love this guy, for me, it's Ryan Presley. Ryan Presley, I think, has been a part of 7 games this year where he has blown either a lead or given up a lead in a tie game. And that's usually a whole year's worth for him. And we barely just the calendar flipped to June. And I don't know if it's, some of it's bad luck. If you look at his peripherals, like his FIP and his XFIP are better than what his current ERA is. So, his SIERA, Sierra is probably, better than what he currently is at. But this is a guy that's just not missing bats right now. And he did get the save last night, but he wasn't missing bats last night either. He just happened to, get, good contact to guys in the field, got a save, but he's got a cool opening. I don't know if you've ever seen his new opening.
what's the new one?
I don't know if it's new, but it's
he plays
just
cut you down, right?
Everything goes black, and all of a sudden everybody's flashing their flashlights with their cell phones.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's pretty cool.
And then they play cut you down, right? Come on for a long time. Come on for a long time.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna cut you down.
I think it's the same one. Yeah, it's the same one. But I hadn't been there. We haven't been to a game in a couple of years, so it's the first time we'd seen that particular celebration. So I mean, that was nice. But unfortunately, I'm hoping he bounces back, and gives this team some good innings out of the bullpen. But right now, he's looking like the weak spot.
Yeah, and I'm going to stay on the same trend, but I'm going to go with Espada, actually, for the same reason, though. I feel like most managers who see a guy continue to blow saves for your team, you'd probably stop using him in high-leverage situations. Even the guy that we all got pissed off with last year, Dusty Baker, stopped using Montero in high-leverage situations when it became obvious that this guy was blowing you games early on in the season. And so it's high. Like, I understand that if the Astros want to be at their best come playoff time, an effective Ryan Presley is part of that, right? The part of that formula is having him there late in ball games. But if he continues to blow games that you have leads in at this rate, you're not going to be in the fucking playoffs. So that game plan doesn't mean shit when at the end of the day, you're going to miss the playoffs because your 8th inning guy leads the league in blown saves. So it's a frustrating scenario for sure, but I don't even think it's Presley that's the horse's ass. For me, it's Joe Espada.
I think that's a good call. I think I've always pegged Memorial Day as my my drop dead day of kind of figuring out who's doing what, and that's when we figured out last year that Yair Diaz and Chas McCormick were dealing last year. Well, they figured out apparently that Chaz isn't this year. So he's figured out some things. But yeah, I'm with you. We're in June. This is not a, he's just rounding into shape. I've got a hunch he's due. No, it's time to start, putting him back in the 5th and 6th inning until he gives you a solid month of baseball and shows you that he's ready to go back. And Montero's been better this year, so you could flip-flop him very easily. You could throw in Taylor Scott, who's been, nails this year, Seth Martinez, who've been nails, and be perfectly fine at least for a month.
Yeah, it's strange because the things we were worried about was like innings 5 and 6, right? Those middle relievers, we were worried that there was not going to be enough of that. But coming into the season, we thought lead through 6, we've got Abreu to Presley to Hader, shut it down. 7, 8, 9's been the biggest problem for this team. 5th and 6th, they've been okay. Taylor Scott, Seth Martinez, Montero, those guys have all been pretty effective. It's been at some point either Abreu has had trouble with his control, Hader, his mechanics are off and the release point was off. And now it's Presley who's been a problem all year long. Just some of the things that we saw towards the end of last year. He gave up some home runs late in the year. He blew some leads late in the year. Even in the World Series, Chas McCormick had to save his ass with an unbelievable catch. He's not getting, you and I were talking, and I kind of comped it to Brad Lidge. Brad Lidge lost a little bit off the fastball, and he could no longer throw that breaking pitch in for a strike. Right? If the fastball was good, you had to gear up early to swing at the breaking pitch. But now the fastball's not as good. I don't have to gear up early for your breaking pitch. I could lay off the breaking pitch, in fact, because you hardly ever throw it for a strike. And I'm going to just sit there and wait for a 94-mile-an-hour fastball, which in today's Major League Baseball is basically batting practice. So it's a tough scenario for Ryan Presley because his repertoire is based off the fact that, like, he's got a good-time heater, and because of that, you got to be ready to swing early, and he gets a big-time swing and misses on a breaking pitch that falls out of the bottom of the zone. But again, now I don't have to gear up early. I can look breaking pitch, adjust fastball, and that's what we've seen with Ryan Presley. So I don't even think necessarily moving him out of the 8th inning is going to be a big cure because it's just a scenario of Father Time's undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, but the thing is if you moved him into the 5th or 6th, at least you would be moving him into situations where he's not going to kill you.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But, Scott, let's take a moment to tip our cap here this week. I know there's been a lot that has gone well here in the last week. You've taken a trip. You had a nice little getaway. What do you have for us here as your hat tip of the week?
I'm actually going to tip, I don't know if you're familiar with the story in the Bible about the wedding guest who sits in the back and then is told, hey, come up here to the main table. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not, no.
Well, so the whole idea of the Bible story was you have this guy, the arrogant guy that walks in and sits at the main table, and, the organizer of the party has to go to him and go, hey, buddy, your seat's reserved for somebody else. You need to move. And so, Jesus was telling the story basically as a way of, don't assume that you're bigger than your britches. Wait for somebody to come to you and say, oh, move up to this better table. Well, so Janet and I, we were waiting outside at the end of the ceremony, and we were waiting because they were talking about, we're going to have extended family and pictures, so we were just kind of waiting around. Well, we go back inside and there are no seats available. So we're just standing up against the wall, and there's some other people standing up against the wall. They pull out a table. Those people immediately descend on this table. So we're still standing around. There's no room for tables. And so they bring a couple of tables outside. And so we just kind of waltz outside, and we're like, okay, well, we're sitting outside. That's okay. At least we had an overhang, so it wasn't terribly hot. The mother of the bride comes out and goes like, what are y'all doing out here? I've got reserved tables up front that were for family. Y'all are family. Come up to the reserved table. So we get to the reserved tables. Who gets to eat first? Reserve tables.
Yeah.
Who's closest to the wedding cake? Reserve tables. So I'm going to call that one a win.
Yeah. Hey, there was no room at the inn, and Jesus was born. There was no tables left, and Scott got the first piece of cake. So that's absolutely a win, Scott. Definitely comparable to Jesus being born in a manger as you getting cake first. So I'm glad I made that comparison. This is a weird tip of the cap for me. It's a begrudging tip of the cap. One of my good friends that I play golf with every week got his first hole-in-one this weekend. Now, we could not play our normal course. As I've mentioned in the scumbag segment before, our course has some tournaments that keep members away. So we had a tee time at a course up here. We've had a lot of bad weather. That course says, hey, we're closed. We had a dam break. Course is flooded. So two of my friends go and play a little executive course. It's like 5 par 4s, 4 par 3s. My buddy Mike, who is hands down the worst golfer out of all of us, playing irons that I sold him. I bought and sold these irons to him. Gets his first hole-in-one. I am unbelievably happy for Mike. I'm unbelievably jealous because I have never had a hole-in-one. Never really gotten that close either. And I'm a much better fucking golfer than Mike. But again, it is a begrudging tip of the cap. Congratulations to Mike Hagerman on his first hole-in-one, 100-yard gap wedge, one hop and rolled in. And Mike got the video. I got the text of him getting the ball out of the hole. Again, daggers to the heart. I was happy for him, but at the same time, jealous as fuck.
Yeah, I've never had a hole-in-one, Tim. And I've been playing golf for over 40 years.
You'd think, right? Like, that's the one that pisses me off is the guys who aren't that good. Like, I had one time I was playing back when I was a member out at it was Baywood, when we were members of Baywood Country Club. And Baywood was closed on Mondays. But they would let like my brother and I, like, because we were members and we walked, like they didn't care if we came out and just played and didn't bother anybody. We weren't taking money away, like we were allowed to be there. One day I hit one to like 6 inches on a Monday when I was literally the only person on property. And I know no one would have believed me. I know absolutely no one would have believed me. But other than that, like I've really never, I maybe, one hop hit a flag stick, I think one time, but like I've never like lipped one out or it's got to be coming though. I have faith the golfing gods will take care of me at some point, Scott.
Yeah, that's the closest I got. It was, let's see, go to Clear Lake Country Club.
Country Club, that's back in the day.
Yeah, the back nine, number 5, that par 3.
Yeah, that's right. But that's the hole I used to sneak onto and start my play when I lived in my house in that neighborhood. We'd walk on that par 5, that par 3. We'd play the par 3, the par 4, come back and play the 2 par 4s that came back towards was Coach Johnson's house.
So yeah, you had the 3 holes right there because you had that short little dog leg after the
2
par 3. Yeah. I hit the pin on that one. That's as close as I've come. So
I miss that golf course. I really do. That was such a well-designed golf course because when we were playing it, the 9s were flipped, right? What was my front 9 was your back 9.
Yeah.
I think it would have been, I guess, hole 11 for you guys is the par 3 over water.
Yeah.
God, that's a great golf hole. That was a fantastic golf hole. And then I think one of the, like 8 was a hard par 3, would have been 17 for you because they had that big tree right in the middle. But the distance made it a little bit tougher because you had to hit 5 or 6 iron. But they had a tree that was, 100 yards in front of you. So that was a well-designed course. And the city council really fucked up on that one. Is that you want to talk about scumbags? Everybody involved with that Clear Lake golf course situation was a scumbag.
Yeah. Well, speaking of.
Yeah. Hey, we got a little bit more updated production value here on the scumbag of the week. Scott, who do you have for us?
All right. So I am going to go with a term that I will call fisherman. but not the fisherman you're probably thinking of. Have you heard of the pH fishing?
No. Well, yes, no, yes. Okay, yes, I have.
So I had a PayPal account that I hardly ever use because I think a couple of people paid me through PayPal for something and they no longer pay me. And so I was just leaving it dormant. And so I get this jackass that sends me a note saying, "Congratulations, we've approved your $490 expenditure for Bitcoin." And I'm like, what the fuck? I've never bought Bitcoin. So, you look up the company and, of course, their site, kind of gives you the runarounds because you're just trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here. And of course, what they want is they want me to call them or email them and say like, "Oh, let me give you my social security number just so I can be safe." I mean, that's what they're kind of looking for. So I had to shut down my PayPal. And so, yeah, I've now gotten 2 notices in the last week saying like your personal information has been compromised. Damn it, people. Number one, fishermen, get a life. Do something other than trying to rob mostly old people blind. And number two, if you have my personal information, could you actually do something to safeguard it? Because I don't know. Then you have to call in. You got to go to your credit ports. You got to put in a fraud alert, and it's just it's a pain in the ass. Please stop.
Yeah, it's times are tougher than they've ever been, and the last thing we need is people taking money from us at this point. Like we already get robbed on the daily basis by corporate America. Do we really need to literally be robbed of the little bit that we have left over? I'm with you on that one, Scott. I know we talk about the state of Texas politics a lot on this show. We are mostly a sports show, but Scott and I are both native Texans. Scott writes a blog called Thoughts from a Native Texan. Scott even infuriates some of the fellow native Texans on his Facebook feed. And I know I promised one of them that they were in the running for Scumbag of the Week this week, but they're not quite going to make the cut because the Texas GOP has decided that they are going to be the Scumbags of the Week this week instead. As part of their platform that they're going to bring forth to their voters is to break the state of Texas up into set districts. We're going to break Texas up into electoral votes, and every county gets a vote. So instead of the system we have now for governor, where winning cities like Austin and San Antonio and Dallas and Houston are really, really beneficial and will make a huge gain in trying to elect a new governor who's not a shithead and in a wheelchair. And we all hope that what happened in Seinfeld when Kramer bought the broken wheelchair and the lady goes down a hill and crashes happens to this guy, who will remain nameless, Greg Abbott. Instead of trying to get him out of office with like a good campaign and getting a lot of votes and taking advantage of like population density, which is going to happen, right? Like Texas is heading towards being purple, like especially if you look at the urban areas. Now we're going to say land gets a vote. Now we're going to say counties that have 1,000 fucking people in it should be worth the same amount as Harris County, as Dallas County, as Tarrant County. All counties that went blue, but little ass Bastrop County, or I don't even know what the ones out near Lubbock or Odessa or all that shit. These counties that have 1,000 people in them, they're trying to push for that to be equal. Why can't we have one person, one vote, count them up and move on? The entire country needs to get to that. We need to get away from the electoral map, especially in a state. Mississippi did that shit in the 1890s, and it took till 2020 to get that fucking shit off the books. It is gerrymandering. You are gerrymandering the entire fucking state to make sure that no one but Republicans can ever get into office. Republicans love to talk about how Democrats fucked up Texas. They're doing their best to fix it. We've been under Republican control for 30 years. There has not been a Democratic governor in my entire life. And if, like, I don't remember when Ann Richards left office, I may have been 2. I don't know. But in my recollection of life, there has never been a Democratic governor. We've had the pipeline of attorney general to governor has been Republican shitheads on down through. And yet they want to make sure that we never get that freedom ever again. Fuck you, Greg Abbott. And I left you this exact voicemail on Tuesday, so this shouldn't come as a surprise. But go fuck yourself. Fuck you. Fuck you, Greg Abbott.
Yeah, I'm gonna push back a little bit on the Matt Navalny, because that's who you're talking about on my Matt on my Facebook feed. He
was being scumbaggy, Scott.
He was, but then again, at the same time, he was starting off, he was joking. And there were some people on that feed who were being a lot more scumbaggy than he was.
I called them out too. And I don't know why I feel the need to, like, I don't know what it is about, my podcast partner, right? You don't come for my guy. When I see it happen, I'm like, you know what? Tag me the fuck in, Scott.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the whole idea of the simplicity of one person, one vote. See, here's the thing. Republicans know. They're what I've lovingly called them right now is they're a zombie party. They don't know they're dead. And the thing is that we have enough House races, we have enough Senate races because of the way states, are set up, that they're going to get representation at the national level, for the foreseeable future, no matter what happens. However, what they know is if they lose the 2024 election, especially if they keep, the felon in chief on top of their ticket, they're done at the national level. And I think that, the guys in Austin, they know it's coming. They know the blue wave is coming. I mean, because you mentioned Tarrant County. Tarrant County, I never thought I'd see a day where it would go blue. But
it did in the last
election.
election.
It did. Austin goes blue. San Antonio goes blue. Houston goes blue. Dallas goes blue. So it would seem to me that if all the cities pretty much are blue, then eventually the state's going to turn blue.
Which is why they're trying to do what they're doing.
Exactly. And you hear this from Trump people all the time. You see them show up a map. Look at all the area that voted red. And most of the map is covered in red ink.
Yeah, land doesn't vote.
You look at the number of counties that went to Trump. Again, counties don't vote. People vote. Land doesn't vote. And so
it's the dumbest argument, right? Like, most of the nation's population lives in like 25 cities.
I mean, could you imagine if the 49ers came out and said, like, well, we outgained the Chiefs.
Right.
Well, we had more penetrations than the Chiefs. Well, we had fewer penalties than Chiefs. Well, that's great, but what does the scoreboard say?
No, that's rigged. Rigged scoreboard. The guy who ran the scoreboard actually was a Chiefs fan, and he put extra points on the board. If you weren't paying attention, you would have noticed it, but we were paying attention, and we caught it. So that's why the game is under protest. That's what we're looking at, right? Like, that's the fucking level of stupidity here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're basically saying. It's like, heads I win, tails you lose. If it's, if we don't win,
it's a good system if you're the one flipping.
Yeah, if we don't win, it's a rigged election. That's what I would love. I would love to have all the people from 2020 sit there and say, you know what? I was elected in a rigged election, so I am advocating my seat. Because obviously I was elected in a rigged election. But are they doing that? No, because it was only the presidential election that was rigged. Yeah. Because we're going to count ballots and we're going to change it just for the president.
Mm-hmm. The globalists did it, in the words of Alex Jones, who had An unbelievable meltdown over the weekend. If you haven't seen Alex Jones smoking cigarettes, getting absolute drunk, and puking while on air, it is chef's kiss, liquid
Did he
gold.
actually puke?
Yeah, he was
Oh,
live.
dear.
He was live on Twitter Spaces, and like he tries to go off camera, but like he's got two co-hosts with him that also had their webcams on, and like you literally watch Alex Jones puke like it because he does his whole show. Then he does a 4 hour like Spaces where because he right now like he was playing up this trope that they're gonna come take his studio and he's gonna spend the night in the studio to keep him from taking it. When like in actuality, like he's in bankruptcy, we're at the point of liquidating assets, and pretty soon, like the next thing to be liquidated is fucking InfoWars. And so like he had made this whole thing up that he's gonna stop it by barricading himself in the studio and being on air when they come take him out and all this other shit. And he's literally starts the day off by saying how he doesn't drink alcohol, he goes out for iced tea and all this other stuff. And then you just watch him get pissed drunk by the end of the day, to the point where he is fucking throwing up. And it is
Okay. Okay, so going back, do you remember the episode where they
he
were
also hang on. He also called Ken Paxton for help. He said Ken Paxton should step in and prevent what is an illegal seizure of his property.
So you remember the South Park episode where all the parents were protesting Terrence and Phillip?
Yes.
Do you remember how they got the studio execs to finally relent?
I honestly don't know.
This is because they all had diarrhea.
Oh, that's
You remember? And so they're like, your toxic gases.
That's right.
So I can, I'll say this. Alex Jones, puke all over your studio, defecate all over your studio. Nobody's coming in to repossess that shit.
No, they are. They like the families are going to take all of it and fucking sell it off one by one. Like he owes the Sandy Hook families $1 billion fucking dollars. Like,
but he's gonna make them come in hazmat suits in order to do it.
That's fine. It was fantastic to watch. It really was. And then one of my favorite podcasts is Knowledge Fight, where they break down the Alex Jones show. And they did a 4-hour fucking episode on Alex Jones's day, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I loved it. If you don't listen to Knowledge Fight, you should check it out if you want to know more about what the far right is doing. But that's going to be it for us here this week. If you want to listen back through our old catalog, you've got to be either a Facebook friend of ours, you got to subscribe to the YouTube show, subscribe to the podcast. It's all in there. If you want to stay in touch with what Scott's doing during the week, he writes for the Battle Red blog with OTAs in full effect. He's also on the Crawfish Boxes, writing about your Houston Astros. And then he also does Thoughts from a Native Texan, which is his Substack. If you haven't subscribed to the Substack, it's free, emailed right to the inbox there, and you get to stay in immediate touch with what Scott is thinking.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that I'm actually pretty excited. We're the family. We're going to go watch Rachel Maddow next week.
Hey, there you go. Speaking of, we are not going to be in studio next week. I'm on vacation. Sounds like Scott taking a little bit of a trip as well too. So taking a week off next week. We'll be back at you again the following week. But we appreciate everybody who's made us a part of their time here this week. And we will see you again in 2 weeks here on Board on the Bayou Sports.